In my last Risk of Rain 2 video, I explored what happens when you don't leave stage 1 for 24 hours. If you haven't seen that video, here's a little summary. I basically just abused the artifacts of Swarms and Sacrifice, which allowed me to get infinite items without ever leaving the first stage. And while yeah, I was breaking the game, most of what happened was intended by the developers, or at least mechanics were behaving as they were supposed to. So this time around, I didn't just want to break the game, I wanted to destroy it and pick it apart like a cruel child pulling the legs off a spider. I pushed this game and subsequently my computer to their limits. Recording the footage for this video alone took hundreds of hours of failing, testing, and retesting, just for some meaningless knowledge that has nothing to do with actual gameplay. With that being said, I hope you enjoy.
Cause the pickle man tricked me again.
So right off the bat, I need to clarify, this video was made before the 1.0 release of the game, so everything I talk about may or may not be patched in future versions. I also need to correct some misinformation in my last video. This barrier doesn't go all the way up, and there's no limit on how high you can go in Risk of Rain 2. While not entirely wrong, this is actually only true on a few maps, being Wetland Aspect, Siren's Call, Sky Meadows, and the alternate version of Titanic Plains. And that's not to say it's impossible to get out of any of the other maps. In fact, at least in this build of the game, I think it's very likely to be possible. So here's what I've found. Normally, if you run too far out of bounds, you hit an invisible barrier and then are teleported back to the map. This barrier is quite big. To demonstrate, I've gotten out of the map with Huntress, and as you can see, I don't have to go too far back inbounds before I'm teleported back to the stage. But there's definitely a section here that's visible and is outside of the barrier. So why is that important? Because theoretically, if you're able to somehow stay on the map and then go from there straight past this barrier, you'd be successfully outside of the map. And as ridiculous as this may sound, there's actually a way to achieve that. And obviously you can't just instant transmission past it, but with one of the worst equipment in the game, it might be possible. The electric vase is normally a terminal illness. Basically, it just gives you shadow fade traveling from one location to the next. It's not all that useful unless mom has made chicken tendies and you need to get home really fast. Unlike shadow fade, the electric vase can get you at least through most of this barrier. It will work anywhere that has collision, and while you're traveling through the stream, the trigger for the teleport is disabled. So you can get pretty far out of the map using this. I tested this on all the remaining stages, being Titanic Plains 1, Distant Roost 1 and 2, Abandoned Aqueduct, Rally Point Delta, Scorched Acres, and Abyssal Depths. I also did it on the hidden stages, a Monument Fractured, a Monument Hole, the Bazaar, Bulwarks Ambry, the Gilded Coast, and the Void Fields. I wasn't able to get out of any of them using this method, but I wasn't incredibly thorough, so it's likely I missed something. But all it would take is a little bit of collision outside this barrier. Collision is in a lot of areas that you wouldn't expect, and of those 13 maps, it's entirely possible there is collision outside the barrier on at least one. Some people have told me that you can bug through these barriers with enough speed, but I wasn't able to accomplish it in my testing.
I did bar escape!
Alright, so for the experiment itself, I'm testing how far outside of the map you can get before either the game crashes or you stop moving entirely. Basically, the way this worked was, I reset until I had the right map. Then I activated the teleporter, at which point I flew out of the map and positioned myself directly under it. In the event we find any parallel dimensions, I would have to be directly under the stage. Over time, I probably moved away from it naturally, but it was worth a shot. I ran things a little bit differently than last time. First, I got rid of the external timer. At least for this part, I based everything off the in-game timer, so each time I did the experiment, I fell at exactly 1 minute in. Additionally, I installed some mods. I'm kind of a purist myself, I like playing games in their vanilla state, but I only installed one mod, and it allowed me to start with whatever items I wanted. And another benefit to having mods is I had access to the debug console, which I was able to record. I started off with goat hooves, energy drinks, and wax coils for general speed, alien heads and hardlight afterburners to recharge my abilities instantly, hopu feathers for stalling in the air so I can fall at exactly 1 minute, and H3AD 5T head stompers, because I initially thought it would make me fall a lot faster, but in reality it only works for a few seconds and then it slows you down. It also creates some errors in the debug menu, so I ended up not using it. If you want to try this yourself, you don't need mods. You only need 9 fuel cells and a milky chrysalis. And if you turn on the artifact of command and sacrifice, you can get that done in about half an hour.
Get smoked like that blood.
I chose Huntress for this attempt because of her high mobility. Glitch can get you out of the map extremely fast. Distortion happens immediately upon descent. After 1 minute of falling, you can already see the character model violently gyrating like a Nostalgia Critic intro. After 3 minutes, the distortion becomes really noticeable. It looks almost like the character is melting. After 5 minutes, Huntress is almost unrecognizable and has just become a mass of pixels. After 10 minutes, it's 3 rough segments just kind of flattened out on top. After 15 minutes, Huntress goes into full missing no mode. At this point, any semblance of a character model is gone. It's more or less the same thing at 20 minutes, just more vertically stretched. At 25 minutes, it's just Huntress spaghetti, and if you look from the right angle, she just completely disappears. And at 30 minutes, she's basically gone. You can see little lines sometimes, but those completely go away around the 1 hour mark. From this point on, all changes are to the environment. 2 hours, nothing is really happening, just more falling, riveting. Same thing at 3 hours. At 10 hours, things actually start happening again. The screen starts vibrating, and the debug log shows tons of errors. For some reason, it only gives errors depending on where you're looking or where the mouse cursor is. In some spots, the game doesn't have any errors, but I still got very used to seeing this error message over and over. The director is still trying to spawn monsters, it just can't because I'm so far out of bounds. Even when I was only like 5 minutes in, the game was still trying to spawn bosses and enemies with high director cost values, like greater wisps. I don't know, usually you wouldn't see that, but my guess is the director is glitching out and is trying to spawn the teleporter boss, as I never killed it, so it probably despawned. At 11 hours, you can start to see some horizontal distortion around the mouse. At 15 hours, the game kinda reminds me of one of those shitty Nightcore remixes where they don't do anything except speed up the song and then add like an anime character for no fucking reason. This was also the last recording I did before I broke the game like an hour later. I accidentally pressed the R key and that brought out my special. This was a huge mistake as it made me completely stop moving. Or at least I think it did. Nothing was happening on screen, so I assume I stopped. When I move my mouse around, you can see the screen change, but then when I stop doing that, the screen will just completely freeze. So at this point, I decided it would be a great idea to try to get back to the stage. I tried to get back using the sprint key and Huntress's ability. This is where the alien heads and hard light afterburners came in handy. All I had to do was look up and hold down the control and shift keys. It's surprisingly difficult to find a program that will hold down a key. This is a little half keyboard thing I bought last year for gaming. I hardly ever use it, so instead of potentially breaking my normal keyboard, I got a food clip and held down the buttons on this one. I was going up for about 3 hours. I didn't see a lot of change, but I kept going. I figured I'd go up for at least as long as I fell. And holding down the keys turns out to be super obnoxious. It basically rendered my computer useless the entire time I was playing. At least when I was falling, I could do other shit on my computer, but when I was going up, every time I needed to do something on my computer, I had to take off the clip, pause the game, do what I needed to do, then unpause the game and put the clip back on. I mostly did this at night when I went to bed, so it wasn't an issue for very long, but it was still annoying. So after climbing up for almost 17 hours and not seeing anything change, I just had to accept I was probably never going to get back to the stage, so I stopped my game. The lesson here was I shouldn't use any attacks while I'm falling. Because of this realization, I came to the conclusion that Huntress is still the best character to do this with. Even though she doesn't have the fastest falling speed, Huntress is still the safest choice, because in order to do a primary or secondary attack, she has to be locked onto a target. So if I tabbed in and accidentally clicked, it wouldn't ruin my run.
Oh my god, my lungs are on fire!
For attempt number 2, most of my footage got corrupted and not a lot happened anyway, but this is what I was able to salvage. At 27 hours, the x-axis is pretty broken and the screen is filled with horizontal lines. The corners of the skybox kind of awkwardly jut out. This is about 29 hours in, and I'm still not entirely sure how to describe what's going on, so I'll just let the footage speak for itself. So I'm gonna fast forward to the end of this run, because not a lot was really happening. This is the last bit of footage I got before the run died. As you can see, it's just flashing polygons and the game is constantly erroring out. The run died almost 37 hours in. I'm no longer moving down, the game is still running and the timer is still going up, I could have left the game going, but I wasn't very optimistic about it fixing itself. Most likely nothing would have happened, and I would have just wasted even more time. The worst part is, I don't even know what went wrong. It was working fine 1 minute and then out of commission the next. It was at this point I was like, alright, I'm done. 36 hours is the limit. I've wasted so much time on this. There's no way in hell I'm gonna do another attempt. And then, you failed. This was my absolute last attempt. I was so sick of this game, and more specifically, I was sick of getting an aneurysm every time I looked at my second monitor. So I'll just skip to where I ended my last run. Anyway, looking back at the footage, it seems like I was falling a lot faster in my second run than I was in this one. Here's the previous run, 33.5 hours in, and then this run, 34 hours in. The only difference between them was the number of head stompers I had. I had 100 in the first one, and then 50 in this one. I don't think I used the slam in either run, because as I said before, it slows you down. Unless the head stompers just make you fall faster passively, I don't know why this would be. It took me about 10 more hours to catch up to where I was before. Kinda fascinating, I really wish I knew why I did that, but whatever. Fair warning, this next part has a lot of flashing lights, and it might not be the best idea to watch if you have epilepsy. There will be a timestamp on screen and in the description if you choose to skip it. So this is about 57 hours, and the third day in. The skybox has become incredibly broken. It's been split in half and just flashes constantly. It was also at this point the game was really slowing down the rest of my computer. You can still see other parts of the skybox under and over the line, but this is kind of the limit of the experiment. I kept going, but not much was changing. This final clip is about 92 hours in, which is almost 4 full days of playing. And yeah, it's just the line with the two flashing halves of the screen. When I look around, it fragments a bit in the polygons, and the rest of the skybox is gone. Everything on the screen is just flashing colors. Most of the shading is now gone. All the polygons are solid colors, devoid of any blending or panaz. I'm not really sure how to describe it. It's kind of self-explanatory, so I'm just gonna move on. Literally seconds after recording this clip, the game crashed. I tabbed out of the game to end the recording, and then when I clicked back in, the game shut down. Unlike the other attempts, the game actually closed this time, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't due to an error I made. I think my computer just got sick of my abuse and was basically telling me to fuck off. Unfortunately, I wasn't done. In addition to Huntress, I did this with every other character in the game. Why? Because I have way too much free time. Now, I only did it for an hour with each character, as most of them disappear around this point, so I didn't see a need to waste literal weeks of my life doing the exact experiment with all of them, and I decided to turn off the HUD and add my own timer back for simplicity's sake. I recorded each run in their entirety, and I didn't move at all for that hour. If you can believe it, I was originally going to do this with every character on all 4 of the possible stages, but even I have limits. That's 36 hours of not being able to use my computer, and just doing the one stage took up like 200 gigabytes of space on my disk. I actually had to save all the footage to an external hard drive because I didn't have enough room on my computer. Regardless, it still took me 9 hours to get this footage. So what I think I'm gonna do is just speed up all my footage so you can watch them get ripped apart in a timely fashion.
Here tonight on Days on Day Games, January 30th, 2015.
Now that you've all watched beloved characters turn into pancakes, I think I've done all that could have possibly been asked of me. Sorry this video's taken so long to get out. That's mainly just because the recording process took literal weeks, so after this my upload schedule should hopefully be a little more consistent. I don't think the concept for this video was quite as compelling as my last one, but I've tried to make it as interesting as possible, so I hope you enjoyed. And before I go, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone that watched this video, as well as the last one. I won't talk for too long, because this video is already longer than I would have liked, and I'm planning on making this a separate video, but the amount of support I've gotten in the last month is insane, and I really wasn't expecting it. I didn't think 100 people would watch my last video, let alone 100,000, and it's honestly kinda surreal. I'm planning on streaming the 1.0 release, as well as a 24-hour straight Stage 1 run, so keep an eye out for that. Alright, have a good day. Later.